hit it.
All right, let's hit it. Hi, my name is Hunter Johnson. I am a horror filmmaker. I've been attracted to paranormal and extraterrestrial type things my entire life. You know, watching horror movies growing up, it plants those seeds in your head that there might be otherworldly things out there that we don't necessarily understand. I grew up in Wisconsin, and paranormal activity was something that was relatively commonplace with my family. My aunt's house was haunted, and I'm not just talking creaky pipes or, you know, ambiguous sounds that may or may not be something. It was haunted. And I know this because I experienced it firsthand. Growing up, my cousins who were my age would tell me this, and to them it was commonplace. It was common knowledge, as if it was just a roommate or somebody else that lived in the house. Ghosts walking around all the time in their house. They said it was a very frequent event, happened all the time, day and night. Naturally, I was a little skeptical because I had not experienced it firsthand. So I eventually got the courage to ask if I could spend the night, specifically for the purpose of experiencing these paranormal events myself. I vividly remember laying in my cousin's living room, and he was asleep next to me. His basement stairs are probably 10 feet away. Throughout the night, I start to hear these footsteps, heel to toe, walking up the stairs. I turn and I look right at the doorway, and nobody comes out the door. Sure enough, 5 seconds later, they go back down the stairs, just dunk, 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 and then back up, dunk, 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 dunk. I was so frightened that I woke him up and I said, dude, there's somebody in your basement right now. Like, I know we're here by ourselves, but wake up, bro. And he looks at me all groggy and goes, it happens every night. Just go back to sleep. There's nothing to worry about. I knew there was nobody else in the house. And I know for a fact with all of my consciousness that it wasn't just a what was that. It was very crystal clear. The video that you're about to see is from my cousin. I know the skeptics will watch it and say, oh, this isn't true, but I know for a fact that it is because I've experienced it myself. Check it out.
If there is someone there, can you open the door, please?
I know what I experienced in Wisconsin, so I wanted to compare notes with people in California to make sure I'll be safe here. We've invited 10 California residents to share their stories of paranormal and extraterrestrial activity from their lives. Voices from another dimension.
I captured a Class A EVP, which is electronic voice phenomena.
Haunted houses and possessions.
So I talk to my lamp. I treat him like a person.
Unidentified flying objects.
We know what we saw, and it was not an airplane.
Unexplainable phenomena.
Went into a rage and went, ah! And fluttered away.
These are the true stories from people who have witnessed California paranormal.
Hi, my name's Nikki Hicks, and I'm born and raised in California. I had my first ghost experience in Los Angeles, North Hollywood, actually. Since then, I've believed in them and have had further experiences, but this is one that has definitely resonated with me. So I think I was about 5 or 6 years old, and my family and I was the only child at the time. And my parents and I lived in an apartment complex that they managed. I think one of the tenants had recently moved out in one of the downstairs apartments, so I would go down there and help my parents out, help paint, do arts and crafts, kind of just hang out while they did their managerial stuff. There was one day, I distinctly remember it too, it was one of those bright, sunny summer California days, and I was dying of thirst, so we went upstairs to our apartment to get a drink. And we could have been gone for maybe 5 minutes. And when we came back down, I experienced something that has seriously changed my life. There were wooden chairs and a dining room table. All of the chairs had been flipped upside down and at an angle leaned up against the fireplace. All of the spoons that were left in the apartment were actually bent and hanging from all of the cupboards, but the cupboards were closed, so they were closed onto the spoons and bent. And there were probably like 50 spoons that were just hanging from around the kitchen. So immediately I was like, who played this joke? What is this? I was 5 years old, I'd never seen this before. And my parents we were all upstairs, and there was no one around in the complex at that time. There was no one downstairs. So it was just one of those experiences that we could not explain.
Hi, my name is Charles Chudabala. I'm host of the CW show Paranormal Central, and I've experienced extraterrestrial and paranormal activity in Victorville, California, Sanger, California, and Fresno, California. Paranormal Central takes place in the Central Valley, which has been known to be a hot spot for all things paranormal, not just ghosts. There have been reported Bigfoot sightings in the Central Valley, as well as gnomes. In one particular case, filming an episode on Sanger, California, we went into the Sanger Herald, which is a old printing press that is still active today. And it said that there were lots of deaths there. There was an actual fire there. Sanger, California, they say the entire town is haunted because the lodging industry was big there. So when they used to send the logs down the stream to be met at the bottom of the stream, they also sent the dead bodies down there as well, because it was easier for them to have funerals for whoever died if they were just put them through the water all the way down. It was just quicker for them to send the dead bodies down there. So the entire city rests on top of hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dead bodies. That was, and ended up turning out to be a scary night for the entire crew, as we believe that we did encounter some active paranormal activity there, as well as some angry spirits that did not want us there.
My name is Jarrett First, and I'm a talent manager and film producer, and I experienced a haunting in Reseda, California. Basically what happened is I lived in kind of this like old two-story house. It had a half-an-acre backyard with this creepy little guest house and a shed all the way in the back. And the house always kind of had a weird vibe to it. And we had experienced a few weird things. For instance, one time we were having a small get-together, and a bunch of my friends were in the backyard, and I walked into the house, and there was no one else in there, and I walked into the kitchen, and I just froze in fear. And I don't know what happened. My heart just hurt, and I felt this cold, tingly feeling rush down my spine, and I kind of just froze there. And I swear I saw something out of the corner of my eye because there was a little window in the kitchen. And then all of a sudden, I just didn't feel anything again. And so I walked outside, and as I was walking outside, one of my buddies, Ian, was walking inside. And I walk outside, and I start telling everyone about this, and a few minutes later, he comes outside, and he's like, "You guys, I felt this weird tingle, and I couldn't move my body," and exactly how I experienced it. And so that was when I thought things were a little weird. And so I brought a clairvoyant in, who I met a little while ago, and to kind of check out the house.
We did a tour, me and my co-host. We went through the Sanger Herald on our own, not knowing anything about the Sanger Herald. There were areas that suddenly got extremely cold, and then there were areas that got extremely hot, and then there were areas where we just completely felt unsafe. But it wasn't until we brought in a psychic/medium into the picture that stuff started happening. She was able to pick up on areas that me and my co-host had already corroborated as hot spots. And she said this area, for example, the cafeteria eating room, was full of despair. And also the area where the boss's office, she indicated, was this almost demonic presence that was keeping all the other young souls there.
My parents decided that they wanted to get further information on what was going around in the complex, or if there were spirits, they wanted to figure out what was going on, so they decided to use a Ouija board. Them and a couple of the other tenants in the complex, they were good friends, they used a Ouija board and tried to call upon the spirits in the complex. And from my knowledge, I know that Ouija boards have to be used in a certain way, and I know that once that door is open, you have to be sure to close it. And they were unaware of that at the time. They forgot to close that door, and ever since then, things just got progressively worse.
At one point in the interview, we asked, what else she felt. She looked to the corner of her eye, and she said, "Hold on, I think she's here." And at that moment, the lights, our camera crew lights burst.
And I used to live in the room across the hallway from the front room. And so when she walked into that room, she told me that she saw black smoke all over the corner of the top of the roof, and that it was feeding off whoever was living there at the time, off their energy, and causing them to feel drained, and causing them to have bad habits, and just feed off them and give them negative energy.
Me and the entire crew also felt suddenly drained as well, that we were all suffering from headaches at the same time. We started having nausea. One of our crew members, and I forget which crew member, couldn't make it through the night. Yeah, all of us felt that drainage. And I believe the psychic also educated us on the fact that our light sources being drained out, our batteries constantly being drained out, was part of these spirits draining our energy in order to manifest themselves.
Hi, my name is Noel Jason Scott, and I used to live in a super haunted house in Covina, California. I moved into this house in the mid-90s. It was a single-story bungalow with 2 bedrooms. It was a little bachelor pad. I lived there with my dad. And this house is really old, like built in the 1920s. I liked it. I had the back bedroom, and for the most part, I didn't ever really have any experience that I noticed until I met Sherry, who was my girlfriend at the time. She moved in with me, and that's when things started to act kind of really weird. We would go to sleep, and we'd be laying in bed, and it's just like right when you relax and you're just starting to fall asleep, and then something will wake you up, and you're frozen. And you're looking out, and you can see everything moving around, but your you can't move. You can't move at all. I mean, you feel like there's a weight on your chest, and that sensation, it's really kind of terrifying. And then you're trying to break it. You're like, and then you're free, and it's like, whoa. And then it's like, she's like, oh yeah, it happens to me too. And so we started we'd have nightmares, and weird things would happen, and I'd fall asleep, and she'd fall asleep, and she'd be, oh, hey, babe, you had a dream last night. I could tell you're having a nightmare. And because I was reacting in my sleep.
Fast track to, let's say, a month or 2 later, I was playing outside with my family and friends, and we lived in North Hollywood, and the area wasn't all that great, so there was some commotion going on down the street, and both my parents told me, go hide in that apartment downstairs so that you don't see anything. We're gonna go take care of this. So I reluctantly went, and I closed the door behind me, and I sat in the living room of this apartment. And all of the shades were drawn. It was pretty dark in there. And all I could think was, there's something else in here with me. And at 5 years old, it's a really creepy feeling to have. It was more than just like a scary monster in your closet or something in your bed. It felt like there was something in there with me. I curled up into a ball in the middle of the living room and kind of just got into the fetal position essentially, and shaded my eyes. And I figured, out of sight, out of mind, nothing will bother me if I'm just curled up into a ball. And maybe 10 minutes passed, and I was getting progressively freaked out, and I also had to use the restroom. So I knew I couldn't go back outside quite yet, and I decided to go use the restroom in the apartment. And as I walked to the back of the apartment where the restroom was located, I saw someone sitting on the toilet.
So one night, we were in bed, and we were always cognizant of each other's, having this sleep paralysis, and we both hated the feeling. Afterwards, you feel drained, you feel weird. You don't feel like yourself. You feel like just weird. So we had gone to bed one night, something startled me, and I'm hearing her, you could tell she was having a bad dream. So I sit up, I'm wide awake, and I look over at her, and she's moving. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna see what's going on. And I'm trying to focus in the dark. And I look across the room, and your eyes play tricks on you in the dark. So I'm focusing and I'm not focusing, and just trying to get focused on something. And I see something that caught my eye, and it was like in the shadows. It was moving. And I'm like, what the hell is that?
So there was a guest house, like I mentioned prior. And so we had this little area right across from the guest house, right next to the kitchen, that we had like a pool table in, and we used to play music. We had a little lounge area in. But there was a little corridor next to the guest house in between. And so while we were walking around after we were walking around the house, we walk over to that corridor, and she stops in her tracks, just stares there aimlessly. And I kind of was like, hey, what's going on? Are you all right? And she didn't respond to me. And I shook her a little bit, and I was like, hey, what's going on? And she didn't respond. And so I shook her a little harder, and then she just snapped out of it like that. And she looks at me and she's like, can we walk away? And I was like, yeah, what happened? We walk away, and she's like, I saw two people there and a little girl. And there was a man, and he felt evil. And there was a woman standing back there, and the man walked right up to me and just stared me in the face.
It looked like cloth floating underwater, and it was moving. And as I tracked whatever this was and get closer and closer and closer, it got to where its head was, and there's this thing floating above Sherry, and it literally, when I got to where its head was, I interrupted it, and it went into a rage, and it was like, ah! And fluttered away. It was a skull face. I screamed, I jumped. I was like 2 feet in the air. I screamed like a little girl, I swear to God. I've never seen anything like that. I was jumped up off to the side. Oh my God, wake up! And then I sat and I grabbed a little piece of paper and I drew what his face looked like.
I distinctly remember what he looked like. He was wearing a little Irish cap, kind of like the Peaky Blinders caps. And he's African American, wearing a brown collared long sleeve shirt and tattered jeans. And when I walked over and glanced at him, he was kind of just leaned over, sitting down, kind of like, really ashamed of something. And I felt that. I felt that shame. I felt that frustration, almost sadness, but anger deep down. And those were just the feelings. Those feelings contributed to me remembering exactly that image.
So this is what I remember it looking like. It happened really fast, and it was a really long, stretched out face, and it just, and it hissed away, and this is what I saw. What I think it's called an incubus, and that's a dark, it's a dark spirit, it's a demon. I'm not religious. I don't believe in like all this other crazy stuff. I know what I saw, and this thing was very angry that I interrupted it. And what I think what is happening, like the sensation that I have when the sleep paralysis is when it's lifted, is I feel weird. I feel like something's just kind of like sucked the life out of me. So maybe that's what this thing is doing. It's like literally like a leech, like it's attaching onto her, and it's doing whatever, you know, I don't know what they do, but you know, we could see shadows move like that. There was always a sensation that someone else was in the room, and you get that creepy feeling. But nothing like this. I've never ever seen anything like this. This was the closest. I mean, its face was that close to my face. I'll never ever forget this.
This clairvoyant said that she witnessed a figure approach her and stare right into her face.
He walked right up to her, and she said he was literally this far away from her, just staring her dead in the eye, as this evil-looking woman in the back was staring at her, and this little girl who was being held by the woman was staring there longingly. When we went up to my room, you know, I'd always felt a little weird when I slept, and you know, for a while I always felt some weird presence there. And so when she walked up in my room, the first thing she says, without me saying anything to her, was she said, "Someone watches you while you sleep." And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "It feels young. It might be that little girl that I saw. It could be someone else, but it feels like a young, playful spirit. And it feels happy because it feels comforted by you." So she's like, "Sometimes in the middle of the night, I think this presence comes up to watch you and feel comfort from you because there isn't any."
No comfort where she is.
Yeah.
When I saw him, I kind of froze for a second. Things kind of clicked in my head, and I ran right out of that apartment. And when I went outside, you know, I let my parents know there's a man in that apartment. He's in the restroom. And they kind of both glanced at each other. They asked me what he looked like, and when I explained to him what he appeared like, they you know, kind of just shut down. They said, "Okay, why don't you go back upstairs to your room or go watch some TV. We'll take care of it. We'll figure it out." And ever since that day, it was just never really brought up. So
when you saw him, you felt his presence.
I did, yeah. And it definitely made me aware. I think as a person, I'm very susceptible to emotions and people's feelings, and that was definitely something that I was able to feel. And at that age, that was crazy to feel that emotion coming from a spirit. I mean, I don't want to say it scarred me, but it definitely opened my mind up to, you know, there are more things out there than just what we see.
I went out and bought a Sony Handycam that had night vision on it. It's an analog high 8. It shot tape. So I didn't want people to think that my tapes were fake. I wanted it to be, there's no way you can fake this. You know, digital, you can do whatever you want. So I recorded with high 8 under the circumstances. I wanted to capture, because there was so much weird stuff that happened in that house. I wanted to try to capture some of it. So I went out and bought this $600 camera, set it up with night vision, and just turned it on and tried to watch and record stuff. And we caught tons of orbs flying. Like, you see ghost specials now and they're freaking out. They do a whole half-hour episode and there's one orb. You know, we had dozens, tens of dozens. They would literally play with the cats. The 99% of the time, it was just calm, non-aggressive, never thinking, nothing was ever scary. It was always just fun.
Until you saw that.
Yeah, that thing was scary and dark. And after we moved, you know, even though we loved ghosts and wanted to look, you know, hey, let's check out the new house. Maybe we got ghosts. Nothing happened in the new house. Nothing. You know,
so you only had the experiences when you were living at
that one address.
In Covina.
Yeah. When we moved to Azusa, nothing ever happened.
Hi, I'm Laura Chamberlain, and I own a pet shop online. And today I'm going to talk about my paranormal lamp made of human skin. So I was in the market for a lampshade, and I stopped off at this thrift store in Beverly Hills. And when I saw the lamp, when I first saw it, I thought, wow, it looks like a Halloween prop. It looks like some type of creepy lamp made of skin. And as I got closer and I really looked at it, it is made of human skin. And so I had to have it. So I took it to the friend, and it was like $3.50. And I got it home, and I was so excited because I collect creepy things. Like, I'm going to school for nursing, and so I like anatomy. I do a lot of I collect dead animals, actually. I have a collection of skulls and skeletons and things. So this was such a great addition to my collection. So when I brought it home, the first week I had it, there was a candle and it just fell. I wasn't even anywhere near it. The candle fell on the floor and broke. And I thought that was kind of eerie since I had just bought this skin lamp. So a week later, another candle in my house fell and broke. So I thought that was really weird. It was definitely something with the lamp. I just felt this energy coming from the lamp. It was getting really weird. And then on the third week, I was working in my office where my lamp was at, and I felt kind of nauseous, so I decided to go into the kitchen and get something to eat. As I walked into the kitchen, I heard this shattering of glass everywhere. It was a loud explosion of glass. So I come back out, and on the table, I had all these candles lit all around the lamp. And so when I come back out, there was no explanation. I mean, just around the lamp was all broken glass. Everything that was on the table that was not glass was still standing still. Everything was fine. It was just the candles that were lit were just thrown forward. When that happened, I wasn't scared. It was kind of like this feeling like it was trying to tell me that it was there, like that it existed. But there was this calming peacefulness about it. And I didn't know if this energy or the spirit was angry. I didn't know if the energy was just letting me know that it existed. So I actually got very comfortable with the idea of having this haunted lamp in my house. A week later, I was sitting at my desk, and it was just me by myself. And I was doing some paperwork, and my phone rang, and I turned my back towards the work that I was doing, and I was talking on the phone for about 5-10 minutes. And when I turned back, on my paper there was dirt that was from a plant that was right next to me. And the dirt was on the paper, and I didn't put it there. And I knew that it was definitely the spirit. And that was kind of like a humorous thing to me. I was feeling as though he was feeling more comfortable in the surroundings. So I talk to my lamp. I treat him like a person. I introduce him to people when they come in my front door, and some people are really creeped out by it, but some people think it's just the coolest thing ever. One of my friends said that the reason why he breaks all these glass candles is because he might have been burnt or died in a fire or something similar to that.
How do you know that it's made of human skin, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, at first I thought it was some type of material that was made to look like skin, but it has a different pigment than you would see. Like, there's different pigments on each of these little sheets. So some are darker, some are lighter. The only animal skin close enough to human skin would be a pig, but the pigment is from a human. Like, you can just tell when you see it, when you're close enough to it and you touch it.
My name is Eric Van Leer. I've been investigating the paranormal for over 25 years, and I've had supernatural encounters all over California. Well, it started off pretty small, just with a meetup group. I stopped for a while because I started getting attachments. I was going to places like Linda Vista Hospital. I was actually one of, if not the first people to investigate there, because I was an actor and it was after they wrapped The Longest Yard and I'd found out about it, and other places such as Hillside Cemetery in Redlands. I had to stop because I was just getting one attachment after another and it was affecting my life. An attachment is when spirit or ghost energy actually latches onto a person, so they can follow you. And that could happen anywhere. It doesn't have to be on a paranormal investigation. You could go to the grocery store or, just anywhere and it can happen. But, wow, I'm about to get emotional.
Whatever you're comfortable sharing.
No, that's fine. One of my first EVPs I got at Linda Vista Hospital. It was a little girl. And I used to be psychic, and I felt that this girl needed help. It turned out years later that she might have been a demon. I captured a Class A EVP, which is electronic voice phenomena. Later that night, or a few days later, I thought I would play it for my dog. I don't know why. I wanted to see my dog's reaction, because dogs are more in tune with that kind of thing. So I put the recording up to my dog's ear, and about a week later, it got very sick and eventually died. Now, it was a collie, and it got a disease that a lot of collies are prone to. But I definitely have that guilt attached. There's a possibility it could have been the paranormal.
One day, I was getting ready to go to a funeral. A friend of mine had passed away. And so I was getting dressed in my shoes that I was going to wear to the funeral. All of a sudden, I couldn't find them. And I looked everywhere for these shoes. I couldn't find them anywhere, so I had to grab another pair of shoes. When I came back from the funeral, the door was wide open, which I never do, and my shoes were right there on the floor. Like, things like that happen. I've had things that were set in a certain place just moved, like thrown across the room. And then I come in and I see it, and I know that it's the lamp, because these things don't just normally happen. It's ever since this lamp came into my life, a lot of different haunted things have happened.
Well, I have encountered demons that came off as playful. We actually did a case in Garden Grove where we thought we were dealing with a little girl, and she would play hide and seek, and we would hear her giggle. And it turned out to be the demon Lilith, and I was actually raped by her one night. Well, at this house, there was a woman that had died of cancer. There was the husband who had been into all kinds of different fetishes. And then there was this little girl that turned out to be Lilith. And towards the end of the investigation, we put all the clues together. For example, Lilith is referred to once in the Bible as the screech owl. That's the only place she's referenced in the actual Bible. In paganism and other circles, she's known as the woman of wilderness. That's one of her monikers. And one of the things that had been happening is that these crows, and crows are scavengers, they had been bringing offerings, almost like a sacrifice, to this one tree. That was one of the clues. And they would leave them in the tree. So instead of taking stuff, they were doing the exact opposite. Myself and others both saw her as a beautiful woman. Lilith has a beautiful side in paganism. She's the goddess of fertility. And then, of course, she has the demonic side. The first night that I was there, I saw a lady that literally looked like the lady in black from Insidious. First night, right after I had gone to the restroom, I walk out and she's standing a foot or two away from me. And that night also, we had gotten an EVP after the client who had been there left. And we didn't let her into the house because of how dangerous it was. The house had been abandoned for 12 years. She had another house she lived in. The investigator that I was with, he came outside while I was having a cigarette, and he was laughing hysterically. And he said, "You gotta hear this EVP, you gotta hear this EVP." And he played it for me, and it said, "We've been waiting for Eric and his penis." and I thought it was the funniest thing. I had been sleeping on the couch. My lead investigator went into the bathroom, which is kind of like towards the far end of the house, and this is where the same bathroom I came out of, where I saw this figure in black. He comes out, and he's all like, "What the hell is that smell?" And I smelled it also, and it was hovering around me, and it was the smell of semen. But I never did anything to produce semen, and I never ejaculated. So, being a succubus, somehow she withdrew it from me, and the smell was there. It smelled like sex.
Now, I did a lot of research on human skin lamps, and I guess Hitler had made about 200 skin lamps. And so I did a lot of research on that, and I found out that those were made of metal that were from that era. This metal is not from that era. This is fairly new. So whoever did this was very recent. It's sewn so perfectly, it's cut so perfectly, and it's made in the way that Ed Gaines used to create furniture and lamps. Ed Gain actually has a couple lamps that are sewn in that same, but this is done so perfectly.
You know, I can tell you that I felt something weird with the lamp immediately when you brought it in.
We had two crew members had to
Yeah,
they're afraid of the lamp. So
yeah, and when you say that you felt nauseous that first time when you kind of had it, have you had other people feel that way when they're around it?
No, I've had people afraid of it. And right now, the lamp stays in my living room, right by the front door, and that's where my couch is, and I'm way in the back of the house. And so if I have someone spend the night and they're sleeping in the living room, usually halfway through the night, they're like, "I can't, it's just too noisy." There's a lot of noise going on around the lamp, and it really scares them.
I mean, there was another instance. Me and my girlfriend, we were sleeping in the room, and it was the middle of the night. It was like 3 a.m, and we had a cat at the time. So I wrote this off as the cat for a while. But, you know, my doorknob started shaking. It sounded like someone was trying to get in my room. And I woke up, and she didn't wake up the first time. And, you know, I went over to check, and there was nothing there, and I was like, maybe I'm just dreaming, so I went back to sleep. The second time it was a little more violent, and the doorknob actually shook, and the door shook a little bit. And she woke up with me that time, and she heard it, and she was like, "What just happened?" And so I opened the door again, and there's nothing there, and so I was like, maybe it's the cat, like, pushing at my door, like, trying to get in. We went back to sleep, and around 30 minutes later, we heard something coming from inside my closet next to my bed. And it sounded like scratching. And so this time I was, like, convinced it must have been the cat. So I opened my closet door, and lo and behold, there's huge scratches in there, but there's no cat.
And we actually did a case, or it was a public investigation, actually, up in Lake Arrowhead, and I was told not to say this one entity's name who had been supposedly killed by Bugsy Siegel. And I said his name, and crazy stuff started to happen. And then I was very respectful, but when I left the room, I had a handprint on the back of my neck, and everybody in the room was just me, my lead investigator, and a shaman. They got very oppressed, and they wanted to attack me. When I left the hotel to go outside, the shaman did a cleansing on me, and I actually started throwing up this like black tar substance. I do crossings and banishings and all that, and I'll get very nauseous and feel like I have to dry heave, but usually, you know, I don't throw up. But after we did this cleansing, I mean, it was like, it was bad. And it was all this like black sticky tar substance. Well, he was doing some different shamanistic stuff and cleansing me, you know, with, I don't know if it was sage or Palo Alto or one of those things, but he was, you know, smudging me and doing all of that.
I would love to have a real investigation, like a real ghost hunter Yeah, I would love that, or even a Ouija board. I wouldn't buy a Ouija board, no way. But I would, if someone had one, I would love to do that. Maybe a DNA test?
Oh, interesting.
I would do that. I would love to know who it is.
There's a big misnomer that a lot of people have, even people that have been in the paranormal field for a very long time. They use ghost and spirit interchangeably, and that's fine in casual conversation. But a ghost is someone who has been living and has died, and a spirit is something that has never been earthbound, such as a demon, a djinn, anything interdimensional. And when it stays to a location, that's usually, a lot of times it's residual. It could be intelligent also. But one of the things that I don't like to do anymore, that a lot of people I work with still do, is say, how could I help you? And that's how I got the EVP of the little girl. And the reason I don't like to say that anymore is because if it's something that does need help, then they may take your offer and latch onto you. And if it's something demonic, then they may feel that you're weak. And most of the time, a good majority of the time, you don't know if it's gonna be demonic or not.
Whenever I was downstairs in that house, things didn't feel right. You know, when we would be outside playing at the pool table near the corridor, everyone in the house would always feel uncomfortable around the corridor. We'd all look at it and it was always, you know, particularly dark. Mm-hmm. And there was just something not right about it. And everyone kind of felt that. So after this clairvoyant came and, you know, we didn't tell her that that was an area that was bothering us. I just walked her over there and she froze. And, you know, when I told you earlier about when I walked inside and I thought I saw something move out of the corner of my eye, that was the corridor. So everything that was weird was always happening around there. And that was a guest house that no one had rented out, and it just never felt right.
So like Einstein says, energy never dies, and although, you know, these attachments are gone almost on a nightly basis, I know that there's still some residue, if you will, and almost on a nightly basis, I have these horrible nightmares, and it's like they know, or whatever it is, you know, knows how to play on my deepest fears.
So one more kind of quick question. Have you acquired it legally? Is it
Yeah, it's legal.
What is the legality of
well, I didn't make it. As long as I didn't make it. My friend's an attorney, and I've talked to him about it. He says if you didn't kill anyone, you buy it from a place, and it's not illegal to own it. Yeah, it's legal. That's legal.
Do you think that... yeah. Wait for a second for the dog.
Sometimes when things happen, my dog gets really anxious and starts barking. That's happened when he's done some things.
Got the dogs going crazy now.
I know.
What are you guys doing?
We're saging the house after the last interview.
So we just had Laura leave with her lamp.
We were both in this room while the lamp was over there, and she started getting dizzy, started feeling faint, looked over at me, and I knew exactly what was going on without ever having experienced this before. And both of us just kind of looked at each other and knew. But somehow this lamp was making us both feel ill to some degree.
Yeah, for a moment it was pretty unbearable.
When I saw you guys outside, I came out and you had said that you felt like pressure, nauseous.
Yeah, I was like right by the lamp because I was doing her makeup, and then she like snapped her head at the lamp, and like the minute she did it, I started getting like constant like waves of like just like this like bad energy like hitting me, and I got really dizzy. And I was like, wow, I haven't been drinking water all day. Like I'm super dehydrated. And when I said that, like he gave me a really weird look. And I went and got the water, and then like when I looked at him, like I knew it was more than just dehydration because like his face was getting pale and he like looked at me really weirdly. And then I just stayed over there away from the lamp, and I sat on the floor, and it started getting worse and worse, and like I started getting super nauseous and like started shaking a little, so I started having an anxiety attack. And when I cut the scene, we went outside, and I was shaking like uncontrollably, like near seizing shaking, because I was like freezing, and I didn't know why.
And so we're about 20 minutes since Laura left, and the room now feels, less pressure, but I definitely felt that too. And when I went out there and you guys said that you felt it, I was like, oh my God, thank you for saying that, because that's exactly what I was feeling, but I thought I was just, I don't know.
I thought I was crazy when I was telling you it.
Yeah.
I've never experienced anything like that in my whole life, and I grew up being fascinated by this stuff.
Yeah, me too. Everyone's stories matched up, and then when she told her story of like what she felt when she first like met the lamp, we all like agreed, and we had all the same feeling.
So what are you blowing into the room right now?
So this is sage. Supposedly it helps clear rooms of evil spirits and bad juju. So since we just had a case of some bad juju, seeing what it can do. I've been on a lot of horror sets. I've never felt any kind of actual paranormal activity on it before, and this time I can certainly say I did.
All but one of our crew members seemed to feel it, and after filming, they revealed text messages to me they sent during the skin lamp interview. We didn't witness anything paranormal with our eyes, but the lamp affected us all individually, which is something we cannot definitively explain. But sometimes activity comes from the skies. I recorded this at the time, unidentified flying object, while working in Chatsworth, California. Later, it was reported to be a rocket launch, but the experience nevertheless opened my eyes to the seemingly inevitable possibility that we are not alone in the universe. Conspiracies, visions of Martians and saucers play in my head as I look to the night skies and I wonder, what is really out there? Have they made contact? Or is it something even more? What are the stories from those who have witnessed it?
Now, there's a lot of entities, ghosts, spirits, extraterrestrials that I've encountered. I mean, that could only be, people would think in a movie. I did a demonic case in Palmdale, and on the way up, we saw a UFO-shaped object. It was actually green, it was in the sky. And having a lot of knowledge about the military, I know that it wasn't from the Air Force Base. That night, we did a spirit box session, and I just said, for the heck of it, I said, did we see a UFO? And it said, yes, landed in Apple Valley. And then I went further and I said, are the Anunnaki, which are the ancient aliens, and the reptilians real? And a voice said, yes, but mostly died off.
Hi, my name is David Ballard, aka New Dave. I'm the host of the Anunnaki Ambassador podcast, which is about the past, present, and future influence of extraterrestrials on the human race. The Anunnaki are an advanced extraterrestrial race, and they are known as the Elohim in the Bible. So anytime you hear about gods or giants in the Old Testament, they are referring to the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are connected to Earth in a very significant way because they created our solar system. They are that advanced. The Anunnaki are 7 billion years old as a culture. Our solar system is only 4 billion years old. So they have 3 billion years on us. They did create us, but one thing you have to realize is that there were all kinds of humanoid life forms on Earth before the Anunnaki got here. There was 3-legged beings, there was giants, there were tiny little pygmy people. There's all kinds of weird humanoid life forms along with all the regular animal life forms. So yeah, they found it to be a very fascinating world that they had created. So they stopped and started to check it out. They basically started a scientific expedition, just like National Geographic will go to the South Pole or deepest, darkest Africa. They just came here and started checking it out.
I actually got a picture, which I have on my phone actually, of King Anu, who is the head of the Anunnaki. And in the same picture is Slender Man. And I've shown this to people who know about Photoshop. They said it's definitely not Photoshopped. And this was from the same location.
So this is where you get all the ancient myths, you know, the Greek gods, just any gods, any pantheon of gods, the Norse gods, you know, Thor, Zeus, all these gods, you know, lightning, hammers, flying horses, any sort of mythology that you can think of anywhere on planet Earth, all goes back to this original group of Anunnaki that were here building things or teaching humans how to build things. So they eventually lost control of us because we bred like rabbits. You know, it's like, can we control, 100,000 cats? No. I mean, even with the most advanced people, at some point they can't do it. And they got sick of us and they left. They have been watching us though, like Santa Claus. You know, they can always watch us.
My name is Blaise Goba, and I am a spiritualist, and I live here in Southern California. Really, where I should start is after I had heard this story of a friend who had, his parents had an experience with a UFO in their backyard in the Hollywood Hills back in I believe in the late 70s, early 80s. I think it was late 70s. I just decided I wanted to see a UFO. I was like, everyone always says they have UFO experiences, but how do you have a UFO experience, you know? And so I decided I would just attract it. I would just start visualizing it, you know, that I would see one or have some sort of experience. I didn't know how to attract it necessarily. So I just started saying I was gonna see one. And then I kind of forgot about it after a while. A few weeks went by and I hadn't, you get busy with other things in life. And, we work, right? And it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. It was November, mid-90s, like 96, 97. And I was asleep in my apartment in Glendale, California. And I literally heard a voice right in the right-hand side of my ear. And it said, "Go up on the roof."
Hi, I'm Jerry Pierce, and my extraterrestrial story is from Bishop, California. This would have been in the spring of 1987. I think I was 10 years old, and I was with the Boy Scouts, Troop 147, and we were doing a 3-day hike camp out in the Sierra Nevadas by Bishop, California. It was a really high altitude. A few of the hikers that were with us, the kids with me, experienced nosebleeds on the way up and vomiting water. I thought that had something to do with just like the altitude, but with everything that happened that night, I think it might have been something different. We got to the campground by dusk. Most people put up their tents and stuff. Some of us opted to sleep outside by the fire. At this point, the fire was dying down, and everybody was asleep except me and my best friend, Louis Brennis. We were just kind of up cracking jokes and stuff, being kids, and then out of nowhere, all of a sudden, there was this sound, this rumbling sound. And it first started, like I said, out of nowhere, but it was coming from everywhere. I don't know how else to explain that. It sounded like it was literally coming from everywhere. I thought it was boulders at first. I thought it sounded like boulders, like a landslide at first. But that's like directional. Like I said, it had no direction, so it seemed like there was landslides all around me. And then I knew it wasn't like boulders because it shook us, like it was everywhere. That lasted for a couple of seconds, and then out of nowhere, there were these lights right above us. If you go outside and you look at a telephone line, it'd be about as high as that. I'm gonna say 20, 25 feet max.
Hi, I'm Jim Francis. I'm a comic and a radio host. And about 3 years ago, it was the summer of 2015, when my son James and I witnessed a UFO in the city of Lincoln Heights. So we were pretty much, we went to Legion Park, my son and I, for a walk like we normally did. It's trying to get dark. We were getting tuckered out because it had been a while. My son was tired, he was crumbling. It was like, I just want to go home. And so I said, you know what? Let's get to the car. And we're getting to the car. Mind you, this is Legion Park. So I don't know if you guys have been by Dodger Stadium. The car, it's real dark up there, and you know, it's hilly. I mean, it's a lot of plants and what have you. It's really luscious. If you haven't been there, go. And suddenly we saw like a flash of light. It was bizarre. It was really weird. It went like this. It zigzagged somewhat, and the next thing we saw was somewhat like a tic-tac. And it kind of stood dead, hovering over the park. Believe it or not, it was really weird.
When I was 8 years old in Victorville, California, I was at my best friend Shane's house, and he had a trampoline that we used to go and jump on, and we would fight each other. We would spar in the air and see who could kick each other down. But one day, we were lying down looking up at the sky, and as clear as you are in front of me, there was a spacecraft, and it was triangular. And this was in the afternoon. It had to be like 3 in the afternoon. The sky was so clear. It had 3 green lights on each end of the triangle that it were like neon green. And at first, the spacecraft was going slowly, and then it started to elevate to where it started to shrink in size.
If you could mix an arrowhead and a diamond, that's what the shape looked like. I don't know how else to explain it. There was like one in the front, and then they kind of came to the back, and it stayed there. It stayed there for like easily 5 seconds. I mean, more time could have passed, but in my little kid mind, it was about 5 seconds. We're in our sleeping bags. We look over at each other, freaked out, and we're about to do this thing to put our heads under, and at that moment, it was gone. It didn't fly away. It didn't fly up and away. It was gone. It was gone. And the only way I knew that it had flown away is because that everywhere sound wasn't everywhere around me anymore. It was above everywhere around me, if that makes any sense. That's the best I can explain it. And then, I don't know if it's just my memory, but I don't remember anything after that, about that camp out. I don't remember going home. I don't remember walking down the mountain. I don't remember any of that. My memory is pretty bad, but I remember everything up until that perfectly. I don't remember anything else about that day or about that weekend.
And I'm like, it's misting out, it's kind of cold, it's not raining necessarily, but it's kind of a heavy mist outside. And I'm in my underwear, and I'm like, but I was completely awakened by this voice. I mean, loud as like somebody was in the room with me. I had started learning to listen to that inner voice, so I said, okay, this is stupid. I'm gonna go up on the roof. I don't know why I'm going up on the roof. I wasn't told why I'm going up on the roof, but I went up the stairs. We lived in this old building built in 1927, so there's no locks or anything like that. So I just walked right up on the roof, and like I said, it was misting. I'm in my underwear. I didn't change my clothes or anything. I just went up there because I thought, okay, I'm gonna just go up there, get this thing over with, and probably go back to bed. And so I went up there, and it's just you see the lights of the city up there because Glendale's a little bit higher than the rest of the valley, and it was cold. So I sat down against the wall of the stairwell that comes up onto the roof, and I'm leaning against that, with my hands wrapped around my knees, and I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of start talking to myself, like, why am I up on the roof, My
son goes, Daddy, what is that? And we try to, of course, the first thing you do is reach over for your phone. And then it was like frozen. You get that a lot. And I thought, yeah, that's bullshit, And I try to get the phone in it and film. I couldn't film.
And I also wondered why no one else was waking up. Like, we were looking around, like no one else was waking up. The camp leaders weren't awake. The fire's here at our feet, and we're kind of all around it. You know what I mean? It was just me and Lewis awake. And I've seen the underbelly of B-52s as they fly over at parades, and they have this wavy effect. I've studied when they came out with the stealth. It didn't happen until 2 years later. The first flight of the stealth bomber was June 1989, and this would have been 2 years after my experience. So I don't know what else it could have been. And I didn't want to automatically be like, oh, it's an alien. But reading about the stealth bomber, reading about how long it took them to build it and when the actual first flight was, I don't think it was that. This predates it by 2 years.
You know, was this a military spacecraft? We don't know. But we weren't the first people in Victorville, California to see things around that time. But we know what we saw. And it was not an airplane, like, for sure. It was a triangle, and it had 3 green lights.
After about 15 or 20 minutes, I was really cold, and I said, you know what? This is BS. I'm gonna go back to bed. And I heard it again. No, stay. And I said, okay, but I'm gonna go. And it's like right after I said that, I'm sitting there facing the Hollywood Hills, and it's a low clouds over the mountains, and I see this like turquoise blue light, this spot of light just dropped down out of the clouds. The clouds were glowing, and it shot down pretty fast. I mean, it was like right over where the Hollywood sign is, but we're on the backside of the Hollywood sign, right? That's where I'm looking. But I used to hike up there all the time. I'm like looking at it, and it comes down, and then it just goes and just disappears up the coast. I mean, you know, up the Santa Monica Mountains. I mean, fast, just gone. And I'm like, okay, that had to be a UFO. What else does that? I mean, it came down, made a 90-degree turn, and just disappeared. You know, probably at a few thousand miles an hour. I don't know. But I mean, you know, I'm far away. I mean, that's Hollywood sign is what, 5 or 6 miles away, 7 miles away, something like that. So, but that's my UFO experience. I mean, that's what I call it, unidentified flying object. I can't tell you what it was, but I mean, I had been visualizing it, and I feel like that got answered, you know, that was, you know, just the spirit world or whatever it is saying, okay, you want to have this experience, here you go. So, you know, and then my heart was pounding, and I got up and I said, okay, thank you. And I literally just kind of like looked up into the sky and I said, thank you, and went back to bed. You know, went back downstairs and went to bed, so.
I do believe that there was something organic and alive flying that or powering it. But if it were me and I had just seen a light out in the middle of nowhere and I could see like bodies, like I'd be interested too.
The next thing you know, we see this really weird object, and it almost looked like an infant, you know, a little tiny guy. And it began moving, dude. It was so weird. And it had like a tail. It looked like a baby kangaroo.
Where did you see it?
We saw it up on the hill. So, because this thing was hovering over the hill. So no sooner did we get up to the top, then we noticed a little guy was moving around. It's so weird. I never seen anything like it. I mean, he looked like a child, but with the long tail. It was almost like a third leg, you know? And it was really long. And my son, you know, we froze. I mean, for obvious reasons, you've never really seen something like this. And it turned around because we're making noise. The first obvious, instinctually, you go, okay, let's stop. Because if, you know, it rattles or whatever, it's gonna come after us and chase us. And we had already climbed like midway to the hill to try to look at this object, whatever it was. And now we don't want to scare this thing, you know? It began to move a little, and then it scurried along. And then we didn't see it anymore for a while. And then before you know it, it was gone. This little capsule, whatever, it got back into it, and then it was like supersonic speed, dude. It was crazy.
Me personally, I don't think it had living beings in it. I don't think it was big enough necessarily. Not that I know how big any sentient, self-aware, self-conscious, intelligent life is. You know, you could be crystals for all we know. Like, you know, if you ever watch Star Trek or anything like that, you know, any life forms can come in any form, right? I mean, intelligent life. We don't know. So what was it? To me, it was an unidentified flying object that I just wanted to see, you know, that I just asked the universe to show me, you know.
The Greys, that everybody knows about from Close Encounters and abductions and all that, were kicked off of their home world known as Safribe. They came here a few million years ago and just basically moved on in like squatters. Okay, they're super advanced, they're trans-dimensional beings that can, you know, navigate through space and time in the blink of an eye, but they're basically squatters here on the world that was created by the great and powerful Anunnaki. But key concept here is that they are the original Earthlings, per se, because they came here millions of years ago and moved in, okay? So they are therefore not extraterrestrials, but intraterrestrials. So the Greys are primarily actually under the ocean in what is known as the Bermuda Triangle. There really is a thing. They're up in Alaska. They are in New Mexico because there's humongous natural caverns in the middle part of the country, in Utah and New Mexico. And that's basically their primary, that's where they live, in these huge underground or underwater caverns.
Here's the thing, my first marriage, I was married to this woman whose father and mother were part of the CIA for 35 years. And you couldn't get higher up in rank than her father was. Any military base he'd walk on, everybody would salute him and say top. They'd call him top because you can't get higher than that. We drove through Area 51 on our way to get married from Seattle to Nevada. And driving through this area, she was like, oh yeah, that's where my dad works. And there was no signs for Area 51. And I'm like, what do you mean that's where your dad works? And she started going into detail about him at Area 51. And I'm like, well, but that's not for a few hundred more miles. And she said, no, it's here. Look around. Look at that apple you're eating. I was eating an apple. I'd taken 2 bites of this apple, and literally within 2 minutes, the entire thing exposed was brown. Every bite I took was brown. She said that had to do with all the different chemicals in the air surrounding Area 51. On our drive through, as we got closer to Area 51, for some reason, and I've never seen this before, and I haven't seen it since, there was a dead cow on the side of the road, completely intact, on its back, dead, with its legs sticking straight up in the air. I had never seen that before. I don't know if the two are related, but there is some very weird stuff happening in that desert.
Aliens could be watching Earth right now. Like, do you think that they're monitoring what we're doing, or could be present even right now witnessing this?
I believe watching it in fear is probably more accurate, only because we're volatile and we're creating things quickly. We're creating technology. Technology is now creating itself in a very fast way, and what we want to do outside of this planet is probably going to cause more pollution and more problems on other planets, and I think aliens would be watching in fear. Because I would be watching in fear if it was me. We have this whole beautiful space out here, and there's this one little planet that could, like, make it or break it, and it looks like they're breaking it.
Yeah, the reason the Greys started to come out more, I mean, they've always checked this out. There's down through history, there's literally since the dawn of time, there are stories of people seeing these flying discs or big cigar-shaped, craft. So yeah, so they've always been here, again, for millions of years. And they haven't really cared about us for 2 reasons. They were doing fine, biologically speaking, but over time, they have been degraded as a race, as a species. I'm talking about the Greys now, because they clone themselves. So if you clone yourself generation after generation after generation, eventually the genetic material is going to start breaking down. It's like making a Xerox of a Xerox. It just gets shittier and shittier every time you do it. So that's one reason they started to sort of make inroads into contacting us, because they need our DNA to become a more vibrant species. The other reason is because at the end of World War II, guess what? We started blowing off nukes. And that is a problem, because they've seen us, how tragically violent and savage we are. We've never not been that way. And now we have these giant bombs that are capable of destroying the entire planet. That's when they hit the alarm button and said, man, we got to start dealing with these people straight up.
Eventually, we are going to have contact, I think. I think we will. I don't know when, but when the what do you call it, the tide, right, reaches that point where more people are interested and accepting of the idea and don't want to blow them out of the sky with radar, high-powered radar or lasers and stuff. We stop being fearful of it. Then they'll say, okay, now we can start manifesting. Now we can start, showing up and interacting with you and sharing, knowledge and technology and whatever it is that they have to share, that we can also share with them. But, we're a really dangerous species. We're not the safest species in the quadrant or whatever. We're a warring species.
The Roswell crash actually happened. The thing about UFOs crashing is they are super advanced beings, but those flying saucers don't actually fly. They actually jump from a portal created in space-time. So it's like little pearls on a string. They jump, they jump, they jump, they jump. And sometimes if they don't calculate the jump just right, or if like a military unit is shooting a big radar beam up in the sky at them or something, it fucks up their electromagnetic drive system that creates these vortices that allow them to make these jumps, and they'll crash. So that's what happened at Roswell. They did crash. So they took the opportunity to basically introduce themselves to us and let us know that, they weren't going to let us blow up the planet. And they're very, they're not as powerful as the Anunnaki, but they're a lot more powerful than we are, because they can, navigate through space and time and different dimensions and different universes. So they made a deal with us. In exchange for their advanced technology, they basically got to abduct people.
I personally feel like the government has covered up any contact with alien life, because although it talks about a separation of church and state, the government really, really is big set on church values. And if there was the discovery of alien life, all of that would fly out the window. All of it would fly out the window. There'd be nothing. There'd be no more belief. People would relate the two to be the same thing. There wouldn't be just this God and then outer space. Like, they would both be the same thing. And I honestly feel like the government would lose a lot of its hold on people when people know that there's something more out there, because the government wants you to think that it's the biggest thing around. And outside this planet, I mean, it's not. You go off this planet, the government's nothing. And I think they're really afraid of that.
The US government has been working with the Greys since 1947 so they could get their advanced technology. That's where we got lasers from. That's where we got transistors from. That's where we got integrated circuits from. If you have a cell phone in your pocket, you have alien technology in your pocket. There's no way we would have any of this stuff for another 100 or 1,000 years without it having been given to us by the Greys. So, that's great if you are a power-mad, world tyrant that doesn't care about the rest of humanity. But the fact of the matter is, the average person is under attack by the Greys. We have been taken over completely. They are in charge of this planet.
I do believe in this. I do believe that paranormal experiences exist. I do believe that there are things that we don't understand that exist in this world that we won't ever really know the full truth about. But that doesn't mean that they aren't real. The thing that's really crazy to me about experiencing something paranormal is that you can take what you've experienced and you can talk to other people about it, and they all have very similar stories, very similar experiences and things that are just too coincidental to not be legitimate in some way.
Yeah, there's a lot that we can't explain. So I love skeptics, and I encourage skeptics to use technology, to use the resources available to them to test out this stuff. At the very least, it's interesting enough to know that there are things happening around us that cannot be explained by just flat out calling it a ghost, but that we can test it. So I encourage all skeptics to get their equipment out, go out and test it for themselves, because some of this stuff does need to be debunked. There are people out there that are creating hoaxes. We know this, and they ought to be debunked. They're misleading people. But for the families that have been traumatized for things that they've experienced, they have a right to be validated as well.
When I talk to people about stuff now, no matter how outlandish it sounds, to me, it's like, don't judge the book by the cover, just listen to the story and file it away. So when I hear these stories from people, I just, we know we're not alone, Where is what we're experiencing coming from? That's kind of how I have to word it, because I've never been able to validate it with, another being, right? I haven't had that experience yet. But, how can we possibly be alone, right? And how many dimensions exist out there, like conscious things happen. And it happens all the time. There's not just like extraterrestrials. People talk about, ghosts or entities and things like that, or whatever it is, whatever that experience is. Stuff gets out into the media. We talk about it, it goes into your heads, you think about it, and then you're attracting that. If you're interested in it, and there's literally millions of people on the planet now that are interested, so they're thinking about it. When you think about it, it draws that energy to the planet, right?
I have no doubt that it exists. I can't convince somebody who doesn't believe. So I won't even try to argue the fact. I just know what I've experienced. And I think a lot of people who are not open to that, the spirit will not even communicate with that person. I think you have to be open to communicate with the spirit in order for that to even happen. So people that don't believe and have never had those experiences, I think it's because they're closed off to it. And I do believe, like, if I wasn't open to the idea, I probably wouldn't have had any kind of experiences.
Anybody watching this who still has doubts about anything extraterrestrial, I would say you should compare space and aliens to what people on Earth talk about God and religion being, and you should really try to compare the two and date it, and go back and date it, and go as far back as you can. And you should look at old writings in temples, old writings on pyramids. I mean, it's there. The truth is there.
And I mean, we're literally like, this whole moment, it was right before our eyes, and we could just not get over it. I mean, for days on end. I mean, the story was told to friends and stuff. They thought you're fucking high, for sure. You must have gotten stoned or what have you. And then I'm glad I'm here to be able to share this with you guys.
People don't believe in ghosts. People don't believe in space aliens or whatever. Who knows what is possible, what is out there. The only thing that I know is what's happened to me firsthand, and that I would never, ever make up the story. I couldn't,
I don't feel that I need to prove myself to anyone, and a lot of people know that I'd rather have, 100 friends on Facebook that are true than 5,000, that think I'm full of shit. I mean, I don't care. I don't care, but to me, they're just a waste of time. I don't need to prove myself. I know what I've seen.
There are some people who say they don't believe in ghosts, and there are some people who can give me a full-on explanation of what they see, and I never want to not believe someone because I've seen it for myself.
Whatever someone believes is their own beliefs. I know that I have certain beliefs and that I don't believe that we end here in this life. I mean, there has to be something more. I don't believe that a soul just dies with the body. There's more out there, and there's things around us. The soul just can't just disappear. It's energy that has to go somewhere. So if that energy is dark or good or whatever it is, it can get stuck there, and it can manifest itself however it wants. It can get stuck into buildings, it can get stuck in fields, it can get stuck in rooms, it can get stuck to a person. But that's just my belief. I mean, everyone can have their own belief, and maybe I'm completely wrong. I won't know until I die.
Nice. So yeah, I just think people really need to understand that humans have this incredible potential that was built into them by the Anunnaki, but we have sort of become this decadent, lost race of people. We're polluting the planet, we're continually killing each other. Just look at the news every day. It's just like we do not have our shit together at all. It just keeps getting worse. And, I mean, it's not just our fault, again, because we've got these evil forces at work. There are evil spirits, This Earth is like a very highly energetic planet that is full of all kinds of crazy energy, including evil energy. I mean, you can't avoid it. We're swimming in it. So people need to realize that we're, awash in aliens. We are awash in evil spirits. We got a lot going against us, but don't lose hope.